Well, we're back for another week, Mark. It's
Yeah.
been the week that it has been. So
Yep.
we've had an interesting week. We've had some good conversations. We had
Yes.
so on Tuesday with the mentoring moment was around the three activities, the three keys in the business model canvas. Key activities, key results, and key. The third one now. Key resources, maybe.
Attitudes, mindset.
No, activities, resources, and I could open the business model canvas and tell you in 5 seconds. But
That's right. It's one of those weeks where everything's been a bit of a blur.
Yeah, yeah, you caught us out. And but it's, I mean, it doesn't really matter what it is. What it was focusing on in the business model canvas is there's two parts. On the right hand side, there's the customer bit, which we talked about last week. And then this week we talked more about your internal resources and how you pull those things together, and that, that was a good lead off out of our conversation last week with Sebastian. And then of course this week we then had Mike Bear, and man, there's a smart guy. He's
He's still got plenty of energy. He might have reached the grand old age of 65 and semi-retired and all of that. But no.
I don't know that's a grand old age anymore, Mark. I mean, we got to be careful because it'll be on us before we know about it.
Yeah, well, true.
So yeah, he's and for anyone watching this, go back and watch those videos or that video in particular. He's a unique and dynamic communicator. Just very natural, very smart, but he's got a whole package. Like he's well researched, well read, well studied, so he knows academically what he's talking about. But he has just a ton of experience as well. And he's
it's interesting how he goes from the 10,000 foot down to human everyday sort of matters to just clear the mud, clear the fog, and just cut right through all those distractions to help you just focus. It would have been great to work for.
It was funny because I mean he's great to work with, but it was funny because he's very hands off, and so in a lot of sense in terms of the culture, and he really is a leader in the culture and leadership space. And was really one of the key drivers behind the culture at EmployBridge, the company he kept talking about yesterday, which, when I came on board, so when he came on board, I think it was about a $200 or $300 million company. When I came on board, it was about $600 or $700 million. And when we both left, it was, close to $3.5 billion. And that was a space of 6 years, that's 600 to $3.5 billion. You talked about the merger and all that sort of thing, but it's fascinating. And one of the things I love is that he obviously understands corporate, but he actually understands corporate in the break. And one of the things we loved talking about a lot was I was in charge primarily of coaching what I called the delivery guys. These were regional leaders who were, not purely frontline, but dealing with frontline issues. So I'd be coaching the regional leaders, and they would have area vice presidents and branch managers underneath them. So branches, they had 500 odd branches across the country. And so it was really about, they had anywhere between 40 and $150 million worth of business. And it was helping them run their business like it was locally owned and operated. And in fact, in their initial, so he alluded to the culture. And one of the things, they were one of those companies that, and he actually has written a book called Becoming Big but Staying Small. And it's a really cool book. I'll see if I can find the resource. He published it as an internal memo to the team in EmployBridge, but now he's published it as an external book. So I'll make sure we get the link to that on our page, because I think it's a really good one. Because none of this is irrelevant to just you or me or anyone else sitting there in their own business thinking, what's this going to be? Where's it going to end up?
We've had that same thing in our own startup. You've got an idea, you've got to get yourself tested, you get your MVP, you fight, and then suddenly you're open, and it's the end of a chapter.
Yeah.
And then the next chapter is how do we scale that?
Right.
And suddenly we need a team. Suddenly we have a team. And it's like we need to change from being the delivery person to being the team organizer.
Yeah, and I think in some of the early writings, guys like Michael Gerber kind of tried to wrestle with this very early on with the E-myth, was the entrepreneur, the manager, and the engineer, or whatever it was, and the technician, sorry. And so but it is real, and so it shows that from the ground up, from the day you start, there is a culture, there's a way you do things. There are unwritten rules that come into your business and how you go about your business. I mean, it'd be interesting to even just think about, okay, so what are, we've had some communication, fits and starts, even in business in bare feet, and what we've done, and how we've managed that, both all of us being in Australia, then me moving to America, then you guys moving to France, and how we've managed that, and how we've managed the communication. And then as the business continues to grow and take off, how we've had to continue to adapt, like to the point where we've got these sorts of things into some fairly succinct rhythms now.
Yes.
That are just working, but it wasn't like we just pushed a button and it started to work.
No, but did you notice how many other people are not doing something like this?
Yeah.
How many of our clients are not experimenting? They're not having a go. They're all too maybe scared to put themselves out there, to change their vision.
I think you hit the beautiful word there, or the ugly word, let's call it, and that is scared or fear. And that came up in yesterday's conversation. We talked about, well, what is it that, because I love that conversation around the entrepreneur. That's why I prompted him on that, because I knew we talked about it before, where he goes into the academia of what is an entrepreneur and where does the word even come from, and that whole word undertaker, which, when I heard that the first time, I thought, oh, that's really fascinating. But it's someone who undertakes. So
yes, correct.
It's like an action taker.
Yes.
And it's someone who takes action. And so then we sort of dived into, well, what is it that stops us from taking action? And I often think about it, like one of the things I train a lot of my clients in, and it's usually stuff I'm learning myself, right? is, so if there are things that you're procrastinating on, if there's things that you're just outright afraid to do, failure, rejection, whatever it might be, if there's things that, you just bury yourself in something else, it's time to stop and ask, well, what is it that's stopping me from really achieving that? I've thought about that a lot in a lot of areas. Well, what is it that really stops you? And you realize that there are...
There's another parallel there. We've been in business many decades, and we have our own attitudes and opinions and experiences in a particular way.
Yeah.
Yet, when we're sitting there talking with a client about something similar, we don't necessarily just reel off what we learned before. We actually, as coaches, mentors, guiders, advisors, we sit there and debate intellectually. We look at evidence and work out what the best way forward is today.
Yeah, but I think part of that conversation is that we're putting ourselves in their journey, and I think that's what a good coach does. Is that we actually, even though we may have had some nuances or even some similar experiences, we're open to, and we talked about this again yesterday as well, that openness to new experiences. We're open to having an experience ourselves and learning something alongside the client. I was involved when with Mike, when we sort of setting up mentoring programs and stuff in the company. And one of the things we said, just because you're a mentor doesn't mean you know everything, right?
Oh, yeah.
And in fact, if you look at I don't know about you with coaching that, but certainly every time I hang out with a client and I'm mentoring and guiding them, I'm learning a ton of stuff on the way as well. And so that's the beauty of proper mentoring and proper relationship, is both parties.
I guess the advantage mentors have is that they tend to have a wider range of experience to call upon.
Sophie, we've got Sophie Townsend coming in. Do you know Sophie?
Oh, great. Hey, Soph.
Oh, she's not here yet. Just give her a minute.
Oh, it's Jared, is it? Jared's using his wife's account. That'd be right.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. Well, while he gets connected. So yeah, it's quite amazing, just in terms of, and so one of the things I've been learning a lot about recently is this thing I call, or they're called in neuroscience, they're called boundary conditions. Boundary conditions are those spaces you go, okay, well, I've pushed a limit of what I can cope with. I've pushed a boundary, right? And so what you see, particularly when you're coaching someone and you hit a boundary condition, you'll see them start to either like obfuscate, loop around an issue, or they won't quite answer the question, or they won't face up to something, or they might just get angry and storm out. There could be anything. But it's a boundary. So basically, we've hit something. We know where our limit is, and that's
it's a raw nerve.
But that's the thing we've actually got to break through. And wow, it's looking dark there. We must be coming from Australia.
Hey, Jared. You're sitting up there in bed, are you, mate?
No, on the lounge.
Oh, fair enough. Got the kids to bed.
You got the kids to bed yet?
Oh, fantastic. Hey, congratulations. I see there was an update a little while ago about a new job or a new company you started. What's going on there?
Wow, hot off of the press.
Yeah.
It's live on Facebook.
Like
be careful what you say.
Wheels are still in motion.
Oh. Hopefully my wheels are too. Jono, meet Jared.
Hey, Jared, how are you,
Jono's over in North Carolina. Jared is driving around in one of my trucks at the moment. He's just left a short gig at a corporate player and back to relocating to Mackay and kicking off another career.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Exciting times.
Yeah.
So Jared was the founder of Split Spaces, the business incubator
right.
in Mackay.
Cool.
So
yeah,
a deep
I was
understanding.
just in there today, actually.
Say again, mate.
I was just in Split Spaces today, actually. It's looking awesome, and quite a few people flying around, and some exciting things happening in the region, which is great.
Considering the very strange year that everybody's having.
Yeah, it is quite strange. It's although for people who haven't been directly affected, I think they're all still living in a bubble, and other than not being able to get a bit of toilet paper, and not being able to go to their favourite restaurant or cafe as regularly as they would. I think a lot of people learn how to make instant coffee at home, but outside of that, if they hadn't been directly affected through their business or work or something like that, I think it's people are still sort of in a bit of denial that anything's really happening, because there's not a lot of affected sort of. We haven't had any growth of or spread of COVID-19 in the region. So there's a couple of people that flew in, but so I think there's pockets probably all over Australia that are sort of going.
Yes.
There's nothing happening, There's
this is the same response here in the US. I mean, apparently cases are exploding. Deaths certainly are not. And I mean, not to turn this into anything political, but this has just been the weirdest pandemic, just information-wise. And I think one of the challenges in Australia, and you're seeing it in Victoria now, is that absolute strict lockdowns at the end of the day don't work. And they just kick the can down the road. And
well, the Queenslanders rejected 10,000 vehicles trying to cross into the state there a few days ago or last weekend or something. It's a massive amount of people that didn't have the right paperwork, come from the wrong regions, and it's obviously causing a huge traffic jam. And
I can't imagine them closing a border here. I mean, you've got people that live on borders. It's just, there's thousands of roads, and it's not like Australia where there's a few roads crossing the border and you can probably police it a bit. But I just can't imagine them that, and then there'd be a civil war anyway, because they must be all Scottish here. They just love having a fight.
Oh no, I think there's plenty of people down south that are sneaking through borders and smuggling people over, and there's but at the same time, like, everyone in the non-effective areas are going, what are these what are these people doing? Like, far out, just like, don't spread it. Like, if we can keep it contained, then we got a better chance of sort of stopping for a bit, or keeping it at bay at least.
Yeah. There was always going to be a bit of an uptick, particularly in Victoria, places like that. because it's, you know, it's winter, it's kind of misty, people are getting back indoors, and there was always going to be some kind of flare up in Australia in the winter. It was.
Well, here in France, there's, the numbers are going up in certain areas. So there's some towns and some regions that have gone back into stage 3, maybe even stage 4. Mandatory masks indoors and outdoors in some of these places. Yet around here, I don't think there's anybody in the hospital at the moment on the eastern part of France.
Yeah. I think the ICU bed rate in North Carolina is about 38% or something.
No, still plenty of spare capacity there.
Tons of spare capacity. Yeah, and it's interesting because, I mean, the cases, as you don't need to be blind Freddy to see the cases are exploding in America. But what's happening is, you know, they're now finding all this data that's just wildly incorrect. So we're probably in America, we're probably looking at 40 to 50% error in the data. Like that kind of numbers. It's out of control because there's a couple of reasons. One, I don't think Americans can count. The second one is, no, that's a bit rude. I live here. And, but the second one is having a private health system that is run by pretty much corrupt insurance companies. And so, you know, every time there's a COVID case, the hospital gets a ton of money. So why wouldn't you declare it that? There's also people going back and getting tested and retested. And rather than, oh, you were a COVID case and so you still got the antibodies or whatever, we'll count you as a new case. And they've already admitted, you know, that they've admitted now in New York that 4,000 deaths that were recorded were never tested because they had a cold or they had a flu or something like that when they died.
Yeah, right.
It's a mess. But of course, we kind of shot ourselves in the foot too, because no one will accept an American anywhere. So, you know, we can't go anywhere. Thankfully, there's 330 million people to sell to here. If it was Australia, we'd be screwed. But
yeah, I think what did you say? 40% of incorrect data.
It's up in that area. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not recording COVID accurately. It's the way they're recording it. Yeah.
Look, I think that's still only half of the inaccurate data on LinkedIn. It's about 80. It's about 80%.
Well, didn't Abraham Lincoln say that, you know, 40% of the data on the internet's false? You know.
Oh yeah.
I'm sure he's quoted saying that once.
I talk to people all the time, and you know they're like, oh, this and that, and they'll throw numbers out and whatever, and I'm like, yeah, what's your sample size? You know, start with a simple question, and I mean you can go so far down that rabbit hole, and you know, and everyone's sort of like, oh yeah, but you know the data says, and I'm like, yeah, who did the data? Where does it come from? What is the sample size? Like this?
But it's an interesting challenge, Jared, right? Because I mean, we've been talking about business, and you know, we've had a week where we've talked about kind of mindsets and things like that. It's an interesting conversation for those of us who are trying to start and run or develop businesses in a society that is loaded with misinformation.
But it's affecting people's plans. We've got a friend, actually, originally a lady from Townsville that's met some 15 years ago, lives over in the UK, and she wants to pop over to France here for a holiday sometime in the next month. Flights are cheap enough, direct flights, London through to Lyon or Geneva, which are both convenient airport. And it's like, well, I need to make a judgment as to when, and then I need to judge whether I'm going to get locked down because there's a breakout or locked out, or, you know, do I have to come back to 14 days quarantine? And everything's so changeable every day, it's actually upsetting planning. And then it builds up the frustration, then people just go, blah, I'm going to release. So just talking to the German couple in a nearby jet last night, they pulled out of Munich there yesterday. They drove 10 hours to where we are, and they said we just needed to get out of Germany. We just wanted to spend some time in France and some food, and we just need that break and a I won't say detox, but just a complete release of
Yeah.
what's gone on for the last 6 or 7 months.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting shift just in terms of people's living arrangements as well. Like there's I don't know what's going on over there, but I know even in Australia, I just read in the Sydney Morning Herald this morning, that, there's whilst city prices are actually declining, it's only a small amount. It's all the regional and rural areas are booming because people are getting out of the cities, even just to rent for 6 months or something like that. But, then finding, well, there's a lot I can do from here. I'm already working from home anyway. My company's now used to that, or I'm running a business or whatever. I can run that from anywhere I like. I mean, we did the whole sea change thing years ago, moving up to Nelson Bay. And I could run everything from a coffee shop on the beach. And now, here we are, just on just under an acre of land in the Blue Ridge Mountains in North Carolina. It's like, and getting 55 meg per second download speeds, Mark. 5 miles from town. God bless the USA. But yeah, so it's interesting because people are discovering that this is a whole thing you can do now, and it's a mindset shift. And so a lot of these towns, I know Hendersonville here, you've been here, Mark. The real estate has absolutely boomed in COVID.
There's a bit of a competition breaking out between countries to attract remote workers at the moment.
Yeah, I saw that with Romania and Bulgaria and Georgia. Yeah,
that's it. Georgia, Barbados, Estonia's sort of throwing their stuff out there again. They're all trying to attract people. I had a meeting this morning with French Tech, which is the brand of startup France and the government program. And I just learnt that they're going to revamp the program to make it bigger and wilder and more marketing coming. So France is about to enter the
these e-residencies. There now, we started talking about these a long time ago. I remember we looked at the possibility of an e-residency. I think it was in Estonia we were looking at originally.
So
actually establishing their feet there in terms of our European presence. These e-residencies are fascinating, and yet a lot of the traditional kind of visiting hotspots like Australia, the US, the UK are kind of becoming more protectionist. So I wonder what the implications are in terms of who we attract, how we attract them, but yeah, and particularly Eastern Europe, where they're doing everything they can to catch the growth curves.
Yeah, no, they're doing well.
And doing very well at it, right. Yeah.
I was just talking to Dean Dobson yesterday, who's another one of our mentors based in Brisbane, with 2 startups, because one's not enough, obviously.
Yeah.
And he was saying he's just hired a Bulgarian BIF, and it's just a pleasure to work with. The guy turns up on time, is diligent and proactive, and we know the wages in Bulgaria are not that great. Just same thing. Another Melbourne client, he just lost his $85,000-$90,000 a year senior dev, and he's looking at paying $30,000 to $40,000 for a fellow out of Singapore or Vietnam. There's a couple on the shortlist. So you by employing remote people, you can actually improve the quality, let alone drop the price. Yeah. And these
well, and a lot of people say, oh, well, you're just offshoring to go after cheap labor. But, when we were talking with Mike yesterday, and I know some of these companies, I talked about the one that builds their paneled wall systems in Moldova, near Russia. And they're doing it because they can actually help the workers stay at home and be with their families, and particularly men. Jared, I don't know if you caught any of this conversation, but we're talking about kind of the whole quadruple or whatever, the 5 bottom lines in business. And in particular, a lot of these people are starting up businesses. And in Europe, because Europe's just so interconnected now, and in terms of infrastructure, road, rail, air travel, all that sort of thing. And so, like I was talking about a company based out of Holland that they do, in Europe, it's very popular. They kind of drive these wall panels to site, and they can construct a home pretty much in a day. It's got the complete walls inside and everything. And so these guys have started building these panels in Moldova in an old Soviet factory that was emptied out, that they picked up for nothing. And they hire 50 to 60 local men in this town who were previously going to Western Europe to find work. leaving their families at home, which of course then allowed for, obviously there's a lot of problems with a lot of the underground and trafficking and that going on in the former Soviet Union. And, women and children were pretty susceptible. And so they saw it as not only could they really build a profitable business with cheaper labor, but they were actually providing that bottom line benefit back to the community they were operating in. And I know a few companies.
Jared, if I just change tack a little bit, you've just come out of corporate, big end of town corporate work in Australia, big international exporter. What's going on at the big end of town? Tell us, obviously not company secrets, but what's the mind shift that's occurred this year?
I think with COVID, I think, like I always look for the positives out of negatives, but I think there's a lot of things, and not even just in the big corporates, but just in general, that people are actually thinking differently. Like if I talk from a regional perspective, and you think about, caravans and car sales are going through the roof. So people are buying, things to travel locally instead of internationally. You can, when COVID sort of started to release, I had friends that were going down to, mountain hikes or walking paths or, bike paths or whatever, and couldn't get car parks near where they would actually start. And it would be more of a walk to actually get to where they needed to start.
That's normal in America.
Yeah. Well, it's not normally normal.
I know it's not in Australia. Yeah, that shocked us.
But those things are sort of changing. And when you look, I suppose, big corporate sort of stuff, and some of the stuff that I definitely saw is that, all of a sudden people were forced to work at home. We split. The crews was split to, orange and blue and things like that. So it was only 50% of the workforce and that sort of stuff. So there's less people, being sort of engaged. And then if something happened and there was an outbreak or something, you still had, half of the workforce or part of the workforce that could continue to operate and things like that.
Yeah.
So split workforces. So therefore, those people that could work from home or had a role that didn't have to be on site or at the location, were actually working from home. And that was a big thing for big corporates, of letting go and allowing people to actually, or giving them trust to actually do what they're meant to be doing, or find something different, or create a different role and all that sort of stuff. But then also challenge them in their IT systems and stuff, of allowing extra people to have access to these things to be able to work from home and stuff, and those sorts of stuff. And it all continued on, and they kept kicking goals and things. And then they were sort of going, how is this working? And it's kind of like, well, what do you mean? This is like how the rest of the world operates. Like, it's just, big corporates that are still, trying to control everything and hold on to everything, and, stop people from being flexible and actually being productive. And, because some people love, co-working environments, other people don't. Like, some people like working from home, some don't, and sometimes, like, even if you're somebody that likes to be around other people and work around other people, sometimes you just need to lock yourself in a quiet room and just get stuff done, and it might be one day out of every 3 months, but that one day, if you just need to do it,
and it could even be, the rather than just working from home, the flexible working too, just, I can go and sit in a coffee shop, or I can go and sit by the beach at a picnic table and work, or whatever it might be. It's just a whole lot of different flexibility.
But even starting at 10 a.m. and finishing at like 7 p.m. or whatever it is, like if you want to do something with the kids, or take your take your wife out to breakfast or coffee or something that you normally wouldn't do, or whatever, and in those big corporates, a lot of that stuff just isn't, because there's just an expectation. And if somebody doesn't turn up on time, well, then everyone's looking over at them going, well, why are they late? well, they might not be late. You know what I mean? They might have been up all night working till 4 a.m. and had an extra sleep in to try and be not be fatigued to be able to come back into work the next day or whatever it might be.
Yeah. Just changing topic again. I'm sorry, I'm looking out the back there. You may not be able to hear it, but there's some dirty great aircraft taking off. And we've been noticing a lot of heavy military aircraft in the last couple of weeks. A lot of like star lifters and things like that. So, what's happening? Who's shipping what around the world, and what's it doing in the east of France, sort of thing. So, you never, just because it doesn't hit the newspaper doesn't mean it's not happening, sort of thing. It's going to be interesting to find out what has been happening to drive all of this extra activity.
Yeah,
they're probably coming over to the borders, Queensland and New South Wales borders. I'd assume.
They need extra help. Keep the Victorians out.
Yeah,
aren't the premiers rejecting the military help already in Australia? Oh, we don't want the military. Well, that worked well.
Well, people aren't laughing as hard about Trump's suggestion to build a wall and stuff for the Southerners, the Mexicans. It's sort of
we need to dredge the Murray, make it deeper.
Oh no! But I mean, it's good to have a bit of a laugh. But in all seriousness, it's so sad to hear what's happening down there, and that that it's so rife in one small pocket of the country. Really, like it's there's other places.
There was a family here in the Savoie that was in the paper today. They couldn't get a visa and an exemption to go to Australia to bury a daughter who had died working in Australia this last week. And it was just a real shame that because things are so tough at the moment that it's really getting in the way of pretty major family things like
you got to be famous to get an exemption in Australia. So yeah.
But I think COVID's really challenging people's mindsets, which is I love the fact that people are thinking differently. Like there's even small medium businesses are implementing things with the thought process and building new tech and stuff of different ways to operate, because they're going, well, we don't know when this is going to end. And I'm like, good on you. Like, you've got to be operating like that. Otherwise, you're not going to last. Like if this continues too long and you haven't set yourself up for it, then you're already in the back seat,
Yeah.
But, it's a tough time for Australia. You've had some dirty great fires in the last 12 months, which wiped out right up into the tropics where you are. Major impact on people and houses and livestock and machinery, you name it. We've had COVID, and there's this little trade war kicked off between China and the West, which is having a big impact. A lot of that area around Mackay is into selling coal to Chinese and other countries. I haven't seen what's happened with the coal price, but I imagine it's sort of been coming down for a couple of months now.
Yeah, I think it's. I think they've been trying to, with all the COVID stuff, they've probably been trying to keep that out of the media, just to not to, spark.
I think iron ore's been going up in price. That's about it, I think.
Yeah, it's probably the only saviour. But I mean, it's always it's definitely a tough one, because I noticed that the government was doing a lot to keep mining going. Even when they were stopping people travelling and things like that. They'll still keeping mining sort of flying and things like that, because when you think about all the royalties and the taxes and all that sort of stuff, like it's a big contributor to the Australian economy, especially
nearly 2/3 of Australia's export is rocks. Some sort of mineral of some sort. It's a very significant factor for the country, and luckily it's something that can go without a lot of people. It can be transported to markets around the world. Gas, coal, iron, gold, all those minerals that Australia has endless supply of, apparently. And the markets, the populations are still growing in most of the world. So there's even more demand every day, actually.
Yeah, I wouldn't say endless supplies. Gee, it's not that big of a bit of dirt that we can continue to dig it up, but it does have good deposits, that's for sure.
It's endless until it runs out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You look at the size of Australia and think, geez, if we dig for too long, we're not going to have anything left.
But we used to say, you dig to China.
Yeah,
Yeah. But it's interesting what you're saying, Jared, in terms of corporate. I work with a few larger businesses over here as a coach, and same sort of deal. And they're really seeing part of their new normal being their office space being much smaller. And so they've got less retail, less rental, but treated more like a co-working space. So obviously there are going to be key people who need to be in the office, and there's people, as you say, there's people of all walks. They want to be, but it's funny. But I'm even coming across. I work with a lot of engineers. Those people who typically like to be in an office away from their home. And some of them have that I've been coaching have said to me, "Well, it's funny because I'm at home. I thought it would be disastrous. I was forced to be at home. Obviously, that's why they do it. And I thought it'd be disastrous, but I'm actually getting more work done, and I'm not having the constant interruptions of people coming to my door." And so they've gone from "I'll never do it" to "I want to keep doing it," maybe 2 or 3 days a week, and the company being open to that. So.
I think there's probably a lot of pending harassment claims though, because the radio was saying the other day that working from home, like be it a guy or a girl, but or same sex or whatever it is, but the other half keeps hitting on them while they're at work. It's kind of like, what's going on here?
Yeah,
I heard that on the radio the other day.
Puts a whole spin on an office romance. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. They're like, this, work's gotten even harder because, my husband keeps hitting on me or what,
Surely that gets old after a while. Yeah, but it's interesting, and so I agree with you. I think obviously corporate have been laggard in the whole flexible work environment globally for a long time. This is where startups and this is where I think particularly small to medium companies have a real edge coming out of this season, because like you say, they're already thinking survival. They're already inventing so that they can get through this and thrive, and pivoting, and they're able to be more agile, so long as they've got the resources to do it, obviously. But I'm really seeing a season for the small to medium enterprise to really boom out of this season.
Yeah.
On the whole.
And look, hey, how many amazing things do we see come out of recessions and downturns and stuff? And I think this is the same. Like, we're going to see a lot of really cool new businesses, new ideas, new concepts roll out at the end of through COVID, just like what happens in recessions and downturns and the like.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So are you in a position to tell us about what you're up to yourself in the innovation stakes, Jared, or is it still under wraps?
To be honest, I haven't had a lot of time. We've just finished moving house. And I've just got the little fellow did his first full day of daycare today, so kids started school this week. So I haven't really finessed and sorted out what I'm actually doing, but it's definitely I'm trying not to use the word consulting, because that's not what I'm sort of going to be doing. But there's a few different avenues there, and there's some, I suppose, little different ways of thinking of how I can support. I think there's a lot of opportunity to try and help support some small businesses and startups and medium businesses, and even tourism and stuff during COVID and out the other end. So it's a great time to sort of try and plug in there. But there's also potentially a couple of little sideline projects and other projects in the pipeline. But to be honest, once the kids are sorted, because Soph's been working full time now, so once the kids are sorted, I'll be back on the wagon. And
how old are the kids?
7, 6, and 3. 4, 3.
Oh wow! Yeah. So you're doing all of that, moving a long way from where you were, getting out of corporate, going into your own gig with 3 young kids. That's that's full on, man. And you're still smiling.
It's
So,
been exciting. and Carlos until Mark come to the party. With just ironically how it all turned out, and I had to get rid of the lease car and give the company car back and all those sorts of bits and pieces. So there's a bunch of stuff in there, mate. I could nearly write a mini book on just this last couple of months.
maybe you should.
I had to pop down to the post office today because my own new French registration document, and of course they do everything in paper here, registered post to get your registration documents. So
not only is that done in paper, that was done on a dot matrix printer.
It was.
It's got the school feed and everything. My goodness.
You spent how long since we've seen a rack printer like that? I don't know. But,
I was just like, my jaw dropped when you held that up. I was like, wow. I mean, yeah, that's crazy.
Well, that's only part of it. So they call this the grey card. So this is the registration that says in my name, it says this guy owns the car. And then the insurance paper, again, paper, that's called the green card. The little tear-off section of the green card, you've got to put it into a little pocket and hang it off the window to make sure that you're displaying the fact that you have insurance. And then your green card still needs to be in the car. And then there's a third document, which we haven't got organised yet because we've got 2 months to do the technical control. So all the usual things that we have in Australia, you combine into one service electronically, get separated in 3 lots of paper with 3 lots of players.
You're giving me flashbacks to 4 years ago, Mark. So we've gotten used to inefficiency now, but it's crazy. And it's so funny because, then they start sort of saying, well, they're all up in arms about this one payer healthcare system, which they desperately need here. But all they understand is that you're going to go to the DMV and they're going to handle your health, right? And the DMV here is like going to I don't know what the equivalent is in Queensland, but like going to the RTA like 15, 20 years ago when they were rude, the lines were long, there was no automation, there was nothing you could do online. And so we have to redo our driver's license every 2 years based on our visas. And to do that, if I want to have an appointment within an hour of arriving there, I've got to get to the DMV at 6 o'clock in the morning. I just take a camp chair and sit at the front door. I'm usually first or second, which means I'm in at least the first 15 to 20 minutes. And so it's a dog's breakfast. And then that's just to do your driver's license, which of course you only pay $5 a year for. So it's cheap as chips. Then you have to go, if you want to register your car, when you do it the first time, you have to go to the license plate office, which is in a different part of town. Then you go to, there's a social security office, which is different again. And then there's the, we have local health as well as state health and the school board. It's just it's a mess.
They are rolling out more electronic stuff here. So with Brexit happening and many Brits going to migrate to France, they've got a system, an online system for the Brits that rolled out this month, where the Brits can lodge their British driver's license and swap it for a French one electronically.
Right.
And for all other foreigners, it'll roll out next month. So normally it's been a 6-month affair in France.
Because France is the other country that's watching Brexit, because France is one of the countries that if they had the opportunity, they'd probably bail out of the EU as well.
No, France and Germany are the heartland of the EU. They're tight. They're driving everything at the moment.
Are they?
Particularly under the current president. Maybe the older presidents had a different matter, but they're in a very strong position right now. They've actually been using it to build up the military. There's a lot more activity down in Africa in the old French colonies.
Yep.
Trump moving troops from Germany into Poland is changing the dynamics and so forth there. There's a lot of aviation, military aviation and equipment being produced in France.
Right.
I think I was talking to a guy from the Department of Finance the other day. 50% of the GDP is export here in France. And I likened it to Mackay there, Jared, because it might be export, but there's only 3.5 people that actually deal with a foreigner. It's only a very few people at the big end
Right.
of
Who
town
benefits from that
that
export?
are doing this. No, well, they're doing the selling. Everyone else is a service company in an ecosystem. So they're all dealing with domestic people. So
Yeah.
most people in France don't even recognise that they're in an export business.
Yeah.
And what is it they're exporting?
Say again?
Wine. Is it wine?
Well, their actually engineering is very high. So France as a culture is a lot like Australia. It's very inventive of new ideas. So one of the biggest is Airbus, Peugeot cars, and so forth. So manufacturing is very high. So it's quite widespread. This area is the world's heartland for solar energy. So the biggest solar energy research and R&D and engineering is all from around here. Nuclear energy, I think France or the US would be the single largest exporter of nuclear power stations and so forth. So there's a lot
nuclear,
of...
Mark.
Say again, mate?
It's nuclear.
Nuclear.
Nuclear. I'm in the south.
You're replaying your best George Bush there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking of solar, Linked Group here in Mackay have an EV charging station for free.
Oh, really?
Because they've got their and I'm going to say the name wrong, but it's a solar port. I think it is basically a carport made out of solar panels and what have you, and at their location.
Right.
And I actually sent Jason, who's one of the directors there, a message on LinkedIn or commented on this thing. I'm going to go and catch up with him to find out the need for EV chargers in Mackay. I'm interested to know who's actually, how many there is around and what have you. But yeah, they put one up, and because they're creating all their own power through all their solar stuff that they do, and they're doing it because they're fully off grid at their industrial workshop. So they put an EV charging station in and welcomed anybody getting a charge to come in for a coffee. So, which is pretty cool from a electrical and solar business. Yeah.
About 18 months ago, I actually met a lady, an Israeli lady down at Yeppoon, where we were staying and working at that point in time. And she was working for a startup out of Israel, which made some sort of perpetual motion EV charging device, which could remain off grid, and they could sell along major highways. They had quite a lot of business in Europe, where running main lines down a new highway wasn't going to work very well. So they had these independent, a bit like the solar ones, but this one was a more kinetic energy mechanism.
Yeah, right.
They were doing millions in their first couple of years, so a really good opportunity. You do see a lot of electric cars around Europe and a lot of hybrid cars, probably more hybrids than pure electrics. California, of course, has quite a lot of electrics.
I like the idea of running your charger for your vehicle off of a treadmill, and each evening you get home, you have to do so many Ks, otherwise you can't go anywhere the next day.
I need that from life in France.
I'd like that to run my son's PS4. The problem with any innovation over here is power is just so cheap here, so people aren't encouraged to innovate when it comes to alternative energy. Solar is becoming a big thing here in North Carolina, but nuclear is the big supplier, and it's cheap energy. So,
yeah, I think Europe's on a bit of a slight pivot towards more solar and wind. They are decommissioning some of the older power stations, the nuclear power stations, and not replacing them.
Yeah.
So there's a
I think this
health issue.
As this thing gets better and better, it totally makes sense. So.
The economics, as much as uranium is dirt cheap, $30 a pound or something like that, the overhead of safety and security means the cost of nuclear is still quite high.
Yeah, I mean the input costs are not that expensive. It's the output costs. You got to store that thing for forever. So.
Well, in fact, there are underground caves through the
Yeah.
Alps here, which is their long-term storage for these bits and pieces.
Yeah, interesting. So, Jared, what are the big things you're working on? What are you seeing coming up?
Mate, really full-time daycare hours, just school uniforms, and
So you're doing the real stay-at-home dad thing.
oh yeah, absolutely.
Not hardly.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's funny because this is probably the first time in my life that well, my wife's working full time and I'm in between, so I'm doing all the other bits, and yeah, it's funny when you go to do something and you're like, I don't even know that. I'm going to have to ask that question, you know. That's something I've always just my wife just always had covered, you know, like
Like the address where the school is and stuff.
Yeah, that's right.
The doctor's phone number, where the emergency ward is, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah, no, all that important stuff. No, I think a lot of. I think there's quite a bit happening just in the COVID sides of things. Just a little bit more tech savvy for a few businesses, and just little bits and pieces that people are thinking slightly differently. Manufacturing, there's a big push to, you know, get some manufacturing back in Australia and stuff with challenges of getting stuff anywhere else at the moment. So there's a little bit more push on that.
Yeah.
It's it's quite an interesting one, the manufacturing one. I don't know what, you know, like how far do you go? You know, when does this COVID thing gonna ever finish? But how far do you go? And then, you know, does the switch? And this is a big question everyone's asking, not just in manufacturing and everything, but do you just flick the switch once COVID's, you know, they've either got a vaccine or we all become immune to it? Do you just flick the switch and go back to what it was, or, you know, how do you encourage people to, you know, not completely go back, you know, keep some of that good new stuff they've got and not just return to what they had, but also advance on that, you know? So it'd be interesting what happens with manufacturing and where they're pushing that at the moment in Australia, that's for sure.
Well, I'm pleased to hear some of that's going on, because I mean, Australia has really put manufacturing in the backseat for way too long.
Well, it's only 3% of exports and manufacturing at the moment compared.
That was the thing. That was the thing that blew me away coming here, was just
massive
in the US. I mean, even just in my county, which is 110,000 people in the county and 20,000 in the town, there are 135 manufacturers in my county. You know, now they have fabrication shops and all sorts of things as well. But now, yeah, I think on the plateau up here, which is just under 500,000, there's something like 300 manufacturers. Now, 72 of them are breweries, but which is kind of cool. But yeah, it's fascinating, just the saturation. Less than an hour away, we've got the BMW headquarters and plant for North America. It's where they make all their BMW cars for America. You got Michelin making tires. You got Continental. You got all this stuff. I mean, it just was intoxicating, the amount of stuff going on here that I wasn't used to from Australia.
Well, here's an interesting one. We were at a barbecue last weekend, meeting people as you do. And
was it really a barbecue?
Beautiful. Oh yeah, no, that barbecuing is quite big in France. It was more like a Weber style of barbecue, and charcoal and timber.
More like a smoker kind of
more pork and sausages, because sausages are another specialty around here. Pork and sausages rather than steaks, and lamb is pretty hard to get some decent stuff here. But here we're talking away with some really interesting people, and the owners, we were invited, but found out that it was a birthday, so they were celebrating a birthday, and they turned the spa on and invited us all to jump in the spa. And, as you do, but we had a look at the spa. It's brand new. It looks great. And they said, "Oh, it's from Australia." I said, "You're kidding?" "Yep." "Where did you buy it?" oh, there's a shop in your town, in our town. The town's 2,000 people, 1,000 people or something. Yeah, it's a shop that sells Australian spars. So, what?
Well, yeah.
There's 2 restaurants in this town and a shop that sells an Australian spar. But, you know, we Googled them up, and sure enough, it was a regional Victorian spar manufacturer outside of Melbourne that specialises in selling spars of all sorts of shapes and sizes to other regional parts of the world.
Mm.
They have almost no shops or outlets in cities. It's just great business case.
Yeah.
They are the largest in Australia, I also read.
Which
Very
is
cool.
for spars, because it's got to be stuff that you can make and put on a ship in a cost-effective way, right? So whether they ship them complete or whether they do an assembly somewhere else or what, but it's that cost of delivery that's the problem out of Australia, not the fact that we can't make stuff.
It's not even that. It's that people don't even try.
Mm.
So when you start looking at the cost of delivery out of Australia, particularly water, it's dirt cheap.
Is that right?
We were going to ship a metre by metre pallet of medical equipment out of a manufacturer in Adelaide. We're going to ship that to Barcelona. It's going to take 3 weeks, and shipment of a pallet was under 300 Australian dollars.
Jeez.
And I don't know if you remember the story I told you about 7 or 8 months ago. We had to catch a ferry across one of the lakes in Switzerland. And the ferry ride took about 45 minutes. We jumped out of the car. We're talking to the guy with the Aston Martin right next to us. Who's a larger than life Swiss character, recently retired, and local Swiss, speaks 37 languages. And I said, oh, nice part of the world, what do you do? He said, oh, I've recently retired. I'm manufacturing truck trailers, the trailers behind a prime mover. Oh, yeah. I said, oh, where are you from? He said, Australia. He said, I made a lot of money in Australia. That Aston Martin comes from Australia. I said, what do you mean comes from Australia? He said, no, the money I made in Australia allowed me to buy an Aston Martin. What did you do? I said, well, I sold trucks and trailers. What, from Switzerland? I said, yeah. I would make them here in our modern manufacturing. I would ship them to Australia. We became the single biggest supplier of trucks to Coles and Woolies and outdid all the Australian manufacturers, and was pretty good business. I said, what's like?
And that's insane when you think about it, right? I mean, that's coming, you'd say, okay, China or Vietnam or something, you go, okay, wages might be less competitive. But I work, the manufacturer I work with here, Mark, and their whole mission is to be globally, they have this whole, we want to be globally competitive at an affordable price to our customers, producing quality product in a safe way. That's their kind of their mission, I guess. And so they know the cost per unit, per widget, I won't say what it is, cost per widget, per operator, per day that they've got to hit, so that they then can say, we can compete in South America, North America, and Europe against our own companies in China and Malaysia. Who are
Malaysia. I remember that conversation.
$3 or $4 an hour versus their $27 an hour.
Yeah.
So you're right. It is about and that's a big difference here in America too, is that it's a real can-do. Let's figure out how to make it work, rather than just hang up the gloves. And
what I found interesting with that walk through that factory that we were in 18 months ago, was the fact that they had an R&D lab or several R&D booths in the factory, but they had no staff there. I said, who does the R&D? He said, oh, the operators do. When they find something wrong with the machine, they come over and they play around and modify it and work it out.
Yeah.
And his single biggest issue was the fact he couldn't find enough people for the next couple of years.
Yeah.
So what do you mean enough
and
people?
yet he's one of the highest paying manufacturers in the region.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're
300 staff or something.
Their starting rates are 20 plus an hour.
So,
which is high in America. And it's fascinating, but we know we can do it, so let's give it a go. Now, so I do have the benefit of a huge domestic market. I mean, that's a huge benefit here. So you've got local consumers you can always fall back on as your lower cost cash kind of cash flow kind of people, but which is less of a thing in Australia. Not doesn't exist. It's less.
I would have thought there's a lot of opportunity for manufacturing in Australia, particularly around modern, small volume runs, specialty equipment.
Yeah, they call it smart. They call it smart manufacturing. So it goes into higher tech equipment. So we make things like we make really great high performance engines. And out of Melbourne, I don't know what's happened to that industry since Ford and
all the Formula One engines and motorcycle Grand Prix. Not engines, the radiators, just the radiator has all come off the Gold Coast.
Well, it's interesting because a lot of the high performance vehicles, the Mustangs and stuff, but the real high performance stuff, the Chevy SS and that here, it's the Holden Monaro block, and stuff like that. And so the engine's obviously much cheaper to ship.
Used to be.
Than, used to be, right, yeah. As I said, I don't know what's happened to that whole industry now. It's all closed in Australia. And
just shipped the last HSV or the last Holden or
well, they still make the Chevy SS here, and it's still the same, but they're making it here now. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Oh, in Mexico or somewhere, but it's still the
same.
same.
It was actually a Mackay lady that bought the very last production run, or the very last one off the production run out of Melbourne.
Yeah, right.
It's a disgrace what's happened now. Anyway,
Just
but and this is where I've noticed that manufacturing I did see in Australia, because of the cost of labour, because of the cost of real estate, it tended to be highly automated. What they would run with 100 people here, they might run with 15 in Australia. And so it tended to be just because all your other costs were a lot higher. And so you tended to come out with a higher quality product. It was in the smart manufacturing space. So when I say smart manufacturing, it's going into something that's a higher end product in the end. It's not just a baseline car or something like that. That's what I tend to find, like, propeller blades for, the rockets that fly out of NASA, or the Boeing uses in their jets over here and stuff. Yeah, whatever. Yeah.
Another thing I've seen happening a little bit of, or I've heard it a few times, which makes me think it's more common now as a thought process in that whole, I suppose, from paddock to plate sort of scenario, but is large cattle farms building their own abattoirs on site. And then they're, instead of traveling live stock, they're just processing it, putting it in a refrigerated truck, and then straight to port. And
lot less stress on the meat and all that sort of thing. I mean, it's quite profound what it does. Hey guys, I'm going to have to jump in a minute, but you guys, I'm happy to leave this meeting open. My dad used to drive a tractor. Where'd you get that from?
Well, this is one of our clients out of Gindi, near Emerald. It's called Swarm Robotics, and they do automated tractors, robotic tractors, sold all around the world.
Yeah.
Now we received a care package effectively today from Emerald, from the incubator that we were helping there last year, including some great stickers which are going to adorn the car over here.
Cool. That's awesome, man. Yeah. I'll leave you guys chatting. I will kill the Facebook feed.
I've probably got to jump off too.
I was going to say, Jared, you're going to need to get some sleep.
Hi, Joe. Just before we all head off,
I'll show you no mercy in the morning, mate.
Yeah, the kids don't care what time.
No, it's 6 a.m. Doesn't matter what. Although you do get teenage years to look forward to, where you can't drag them out of bed at 9.
My kids are 5:30.
Oh. Nasty. Of course, daylight saving up there, yeah, or no daylight saving. Oh, yeah, it's winter anyway.
It does matter in Mackay.
Yeah. Well, good meeting you, mate, and you're welcome on here anytime. This is a kind of a weekly affair, but it's always fascinating to see who comes and joins us each week. That's cool.
Yeah. Well, Darren obviously joins in a lot, but he's recovering from surgery again this week. Darren Foster.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, Mr. Robot. He's getting all these robotic implants put in. he'll be more machine than man. So.
Hey mate, how are you?
Hello, how are you?
It's awesome to see you.
Thanks for the link, because I've been I've deleted off Facebook, so I haven't been able to.
So Joe Sweeney was saying hi Aussies on the chat before, and so I was trying to get her to come on in, but it was obviously right at the end. But she said, "Hi guys."
Yeah, it's a
She's
shame
from,
when we're on Zoom. When we're on
yeah,
Zoom, it's hard to watch the Facebook as well, which is obviously what you're doing, Linda. But yeah, I got my puppy here going. Okay, what are you doing? So, Izzy, hey, what are you doing down there? Look up here. We're up here. Yeah, there we are. So.
Puppy lying on the
Oh, there's yours. Yeah, I'm sure mine will be assuming that position soon.
Yeah, I'll show you mine. Can you see mine?
All black. Very good.
Oh, I don't
All right, we've got to wrap this up and keep on moving. It's Poets' Day.